Echoes Hue. Audio Productions. Smooth, sweet sounds. Echoes Hue Audio Productions proudly presents a J.S. Mensah audio work.
Hi everybody, and welcome to my brand new podcast, Would You Adam and Eve It, with me, Del McCamley. Keep up to date with content from Echoes Hue Audio Productions by following us on TikTok, Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. Don't forget to follow, like and comment. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be talking about issues that affect us all on a national, local and global level. As the famous Blues Brothers once said, issues that affect you, me, them, everybody. Because everybody needs somebody. Somebody to love, miss and kiss and keep you all clued up as just what the hell is going on out there. Because if I don't tell you, then nobody will. Definitely not any of our competitors. So sit back, kick back, relax, grab yourself a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, glass of whiskey, glass of vodka. Oh, glass of whiskey, glass of vodka? What the hell? Who starts drinking at this time of the day? What? My producer just said everybody. No, man, that's not true. Not everybody. Anyway, just relax and know that Del is going to get in there and wiggle and jiggle out the workings of just what the heck is going on in that jolly game we call life. You know it makes sense. So stick with me. I'll put you right. Okay, so there's something that's been going on in America during the last decade or so that's gradually working its way to our shores, filtering through and washing up in our fair land by way of Europe. As if the drug problems we've got over here at the moment weren't bad enough, there's more shocks, scares and sweats heading our way. Over in the States, the amount of deaths through the drug fentanyl has scorched the landscape, laying waste to and killing hundreds of thousands, even at one time killing one person every 5 minutes. Would you Adam and Eve it? Let's just give that some thought. Let that sink in for a while. That means that in the same amount of time it takes for you to make a quick phone call and then to Google something and then empty your bin and then write a flipping shopping list and then cancel a bleeding subscription, 5 people will have died from taking the drug called fentanyl. Now, for those of you not familiar with fentanyl, and really why should you be, it's a form of synthetic opioid. For those of you who are not familiar with synthetic opioids, and again, why should you be, synthetic opioids are substances knocked together in a laboratory that do the same job as natural opioids, such as morphine and codeine. They all give out pain relief. Speaking at the UN Commission on Narcotic Drugs in March, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said of the fentanyl drug problem, "It hit us hard, it hit us first, but unfortunately not last, and we can see its ravages taking hold in other countries." Josh Torrance, who's a drug researcher at the University of Bristol, has stated, "I'm scared about the UK opioid supply." Torrance went on to talk about how the UK has a serious and growing problem with drug-related deaths. Here's some figures for you. In 2022, 5,000 deaths occurred from drugs in England and Wales, topping those records since they started in 1993. just under half of those deaths have been attributed to synthetic opioids. Scotland has the highest drug death rate in the whole of Europe. 80% of the 1,051 of those fatalities in 2022 were through synthetic opioids. The reason I'm talking to you about synthetic opioids and fentanyl and chucking all the disturbing and distressing figures at you is to lead you into the important and critical discussion that I want to talk about in a minute concerning a growing issue that doesn't seem to be played up and even given the serious focus it should be given. As you would expect, there's been some noise raised by a few politicians about what I'm going to speak about, but nowhere near the blaring levels of gravity with which it should be treated. James Cleverly, in his role as Home Secretary, has been quoted as saying that we are highly alert to the threat from synthetic drugs and have been taking a range of preventative action, learning from experiences around the globe to keep these vile drugs off our streets. Chris Philp, in his role as Crime and Policing Minister, also chipped in saying, we have a strategy that is tackling the soulless criminal networks supplying these drugs. We are enhancing our early warning system to ensure the right agencies can respond if these drugs are detected in communities. What's interesting about these statements and blathering bursts of baloney is the fact that a newer, more fatal form of synthetic opioids are already pouring in and purging our country at the moment. They're called Nitazenes. What are Nitazenes, I hear you ask? Nitazenes are a new category of synthetic opioids. These little delights were first uncovered in the European drug markets in 2019 and in Scotland in 2021. As you can probably guess by now, Nitazenes were first concocted in America. What you probably don't know is that they were created in the 1950s to serve as opioid analgesics. That's painkillers to you and me. Wisely so, they were never approved for marketing. They were too strong. This is because of their soaring levels of potency. When I tell you that, I am not bleeding gildin the proverbial lily here. When I tell you these things were potent, I'm talking about leaving the blooming airlock without a safety harness. These things were 1,000 times stronger than morphine and tenfold the strength of fentanyl. An even more unnerving fact that comes out of all this is that because they were never approved, there's absolutely nothing known about them outside academic research labs. That's in the real world. Absolutely diddly squat. This collection of delightful opioids are coming into our country and are sure to cause endless suffering and grief. The frightening thing about Nitazenes is how little we know about them. There's nothing out there that tells anyone, and I mean anyone, how to reverse a nitazene overdose, as public health efforts to combat this problem is almost non-existent. There's practically no training being given to first responders, healthcare professionals, and us, the general public, about what is a looming threat to the recreational drug supply. They're out there, ready and waiting for any poor sucker who might have a habit and be buying from street dealers at a corner near you. And you won't even know you're taking them. Anyone that's been unfortunate enough to ingest anything containing nitazenes will not have a Scooby-Doo about what's happening to them when they run into respiratory problems and OD. That means, as I said before, that any team of paramedics or police officers who turn up to attend a scene where someone's overdosed on nitazenes won't be able to help, even if they have conventional fentanyl test strips, because even they can't detect the presence of nitazenes. How worrying is that? The fact that first responders won't be able to detect the presence of nitazenes in some poor soul dying in front of them. That all known tests will come away with a handful of nothing. Nitazenes can be put into a variety of drugs. They could be blended with powders, fake tablets, illegal liquids such as lean, or dirty Sprite as they call it, and can be mixed with heroin or fentanyl. The opioid of choice for most users used to be fentanyl, but now nitazenes seem to be overtaking fentanyl as Europe's opioid of choice. The only problem with nitazenes, the overarching fatal crunch, is that the margin of error where nitazenes are concerned between a dose that will get you whipping and threshing out of your box and one that will put you in your grave is so much slimmer. That means if someone grabs a bag of smacks and pills or even a spray that's been blended with nitazenes, the chance of them keeling over and dying of an overdose goes through the roof. We're talking stratospheric levels of fatalities. What should really throw you into witless bouts of panic is the fact that a recent BBC investigation found that this stuff is being touted through social media platforms, despite being highly illegal. Would you Adam and Eve it? I mean, what the hell is going on? One of the reasons for this inrush of nitazenes into the UK can be attributed to the Taliban's suppression of poppy farming in Afghanistan, which furnished the European market with roughly 95% of its heroin. Even though Europe's heroin trafficking networks, alongside excess stores of opium in Afghanistan, means is that drug dealers haven't completely run out their heroin to flood the streets with, latest figures from drug seizures in England and Wales point to flagging supplies. The Taliban have gone into the poppy fields, and now the supply of heroin isn't coming into the country. This is backed up by statistics given out by both UK Police and Border Force, who seized 33% less heroin in March 2023 than the year before, despite Border Force clamping down and making the highest number of drug seizures ever recorded. That means, people, drug dealers have to find a replacement to feed all those addicts out there. Enter synthetic opioids such as nitazenes. These powerful synthetic drugs are a clear winner for dealers and producers, as they can be knocked together quickly and cheaply without having to rely on all those lovely crops that are grown in other countries. And let's face it, folks, we all know what a bout of bad weather can do to a bunch of crops, don't we? Know what I mean? Why not thump up some gorgeous fake substitute to chuck out there on the streets instead? Why not have them knocked up by people who haven't a clue what they're doing? I'm talking about your Slow Joes from Walthamstow, or Divvy Daves from Dagenham, or Loopy Lesters from, well, Leicester. If you think I'm scaremongering, what about the fact that British law enforcement made record levels of seizing synthetic opioids from a factory in East London, hauling in around 150,000 pills containing nitazenes? How's that rock your boat? According to the Alcohol and Drug Foundation, nitazenes can be sold in white powder form, crystalline solid or brown yellow powder. As I mentioned before, they've been found in tablets, fake oxycodone, heroin, ketamine and synthetic cannabinoids. We can pause and take a breath for now, as the extent of the synthetic opioid problems isn't anywhere near the UK. Yet. Harry Shapiro, who's the Director of Information Service DrugWise, with over 35 years of experience and research under his belt, says that the difference between the US and the UK is that America has an overprescription of opioids from legit doctors and rogue doctors operating out of pill mills, leading to a tide of opioid addiction, in part supplied by the Mexican drug cartels. Experts at the University of California say that the US opioid problem is now in its fourth wave, with fentanyl spreading throughout the US drug supply, popping up in cocaine and other stimulants. So far, the problems we've had in the UK with nitazenes has only been within local areas, with post-mortem tests and results picking out clutches of nitazene-related deaths in places such as Birmingham, Scotland, Norfolk and Northern Ireland. But if opium farming in Afghanistan is as regularly interrupted as it is now, then we could have a huge problem on our hands. In fact, without a proper grasp on the problem, nitazenes could end up in a variety of drugs, as I've said before, such as oxycodone, heroin, ketamine and synthetic cannabinoids, to name but a few. I'll keep stating that all the time. I can't overstate that enough. According to Caroline Copeland, who runs the National Programme on Substance Use Mortality, which collates data reported by 90% of coroners' offices in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, the UK nitazenes problem could be unnoticed just yet, telling us there's a shortage of data. She says that not every death is investigated by a coroner, not every death that is investigated by a coroner has full post-mortem toxicology, and not every toxicology report is fully comprehensive for every compound under the sun. While this gives us an idea of the general trend, it's difficult to get 100% numbers. In between the months of July and October 2023, Mark Pusey, a consultant in clinical toxicology based in both Birmingham and Sandwell, put together loads of data from people suffering non-fatal overdoses and other drug-related issues. He found that at least 19 individuals were shown to have taken nitazenes, telling us that nitazenes are far more prevalent in our drug supply than figures would have us believe. Judith Yates, who's a retired GP who also collects data on drug deaths in Birmingham, suggests that even though the UK government has introduced state-of-the-art monitoring for synthetic opioids by scrutinising wastewater and recording spikes in overdoses in specific locations, the government has still been a bit slow on the uptake. She says that tracking non-fatal overdoses requires focus, dedication and money. We're very lucky in Birmingham to have 2 very good toxicology labs, and the toxicologists themselves are very open to it, but they don't have the funding. Sound like a familiar tune we're hearing here? Yates is also part of a Welsh government-funded online drug testing service called Weddinos, short for the Welsh Emerging Drugs and Identification of Novel Substances. In the analysis of Weddinos data, the findings suggested 145 instances of nitazenes since 2021, 73 of which appeared in 2023, with 44 more added on from January and April this year. The potential problem of underfunding within this area is already being flagged up by certain professionals who work within the sector. Andre Gomez, who works with Release, a body that specialises in UK drug policy, tells us that we are already topping the league as one of the deadliest countries in Europe for people who use drugs, and we're starting to see more and more signs that there are other dangerous adulterants entering the drug market. This looks, smells and walks like a public health emergency. Health funds need to be unlocked, and that means directing money away from the criminal system and towards health interventions. The scale of our ignorance of nitazenes is staggering, with the Centre for Disease Control and Prevention in the States, CDC, coming up with 0 results on their website in 2022. We just don't know what we're dealing with here. I'm going to end with a plea to the powers that be. These things will not magically vanish. There's already a huge burgeoning demand to fill in the gaps created by shortages of heroin. This thing is hugely profitable. It's called supply and demand. I'm calling on the UK government, in conjunction with other global authorities, to stiffen penalties and clamp down on any possibility of nitazenes getting to a stage where it's too late. I'm calling on the UK government to educate and warn people of the sickening and terrible implications these synthetic opioids, such as nitazenes, pose to us as a society. That doesn't mean provide mere lip service to the problem, but a nationwide alert to everyone in the form of adverts, educational campaigns, and, above all, research for both users and medical professionals, providing evidence-based practice or evidence-informed practice for the understanding of how to deal with this growing issue. Nitazenes. This should be a priority, right? I've been Del McCamley, and this has been Would You Adam and Eve It? Don't be shy. Tune in for next time. See ya!
Thanks for listening to an Echoes Hue audio productions project. Smooth, sweet sounds. Keep up to date with content from Echoes Hue Audio Productions by following us on TikTok, Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. Don't forget to follow, like and comment. Would You Adam and Eve It is written and presented by Del McCamley. The podcast is directed and produced by J.S. Mensah. Our theme music is by Oleg Mazur.